All right. What up, homies? It's Tim from Dunk Day. Taking my first stab at a podcast style here. I'm excited to bring you in and add another piece of content to the worldwide phenomenon that is the Dunk Day podcast with all 15 of you following. Um, Absolute honor and privilege today of being joined by none other than, see if I can get all these letters right, Andrew Cable, PT, DPT, aka little brother. What's up, Andrew? How you doing?
Hey, Tim. Just honor and pleasure to be here. I'm excited to get into this with you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining.
Yeah,
So I mean, you know my style. This will not be formal. I don't really have any prepared questions. Um, but want to start a little bit with your background. What makes you qualified to be the first guest on the again illustrious Dunk Day podcast?
yeah. It's a great question. Well, I think my prepared answer would be that as physical therapists, we like our goal is really to take the movement system. That's what we want to own. Physicians work on different systems in the body, urinary system, neurological system, many things like that. Exercise physiologists have their own separate things. There's all these different worlds, and we've decided that the movement system, how the human body moves, is one that's ours. And calling it a system is kind of a bit of an interesting term because it's all those things working together. So we have a general understanding of all of those and are more focused on the interplay. So when we think about something like jumping, which is a high intensity um, propulsive movement, there's a lot there to look at, and you can
Mhm.
dive into the super nitty gritty of things. But I think when we are talking about improving your jump based off of all your other movement history, there's a lot of things that I think can explain why you are looking the way you're looking right now. And for the crowd, this is after a little brief session we had out in Boston. Tim flew me out, and we did a little
Yep.
analysis
Only
of
reason we were out there. Spot
sprint
on.
dunk sequencing. So yeah,
Yeah.
and after seeing some of that and giving some immediate feedback, obviously more things to learn. But yeah, that's kind of how we started and how we started this idea.
Yeah. So, okay, you're legit. I think that last segment proved it. Let's actually go back even further and just talk about you planting the seed. I think you
Yeah,
planted a number of seeds despite being the little brother here, pushing me in a
yeah,
lot of good ways. But I think it was right around the holidays, and we're all back home and got the plastic hoop in the front yard, and you're like, "Oh, Tim, you could dunk someday." And that's just a really loaded sentence, man. And
seed
here we are.
planted.
I've been grinding on it ever since. But what went through your head when you said that?
Yeah,
Knowing me, I'm the most athletic specimen of all the brothers, I think, and
likely.
definitely not the least easily influenced. So, what was behind
Yeah.
that?
No, I truly think, and it was probably coming off of some review of stuff that I had seen. I read the journals and look at a lot of content. I just find this stuff fascinating. And what's very interesting to me is in as we age, obviously, where everybody knows that you get like they throw around all these different numbers, but you get weaker. But weakness is not really like it's more multifactorial than that. Your muscles get smaller, and that's part of it. But more importantly, they have less ability to produce power. And power is force and speed combined. Like you need to consider both of those variables.
Hmm.
So I probably had just read some stuff, watched some stuff, had talked to people about this, and was just kind of inspired by the fact that like we don't do any in the traditional at like sports performance training world, which is changing a ton. And I would say maybe in the world that you and I grew up in, deadlift, squat, like all the basic
Basic
strength.
Olympic squats. Yep.
Yeah, and also purely strength training. Like there is not really a huge component of power training. Even when we had our plyometric day at Rincon, which we both went through their basketball program, right
The
idea,
worst day.
execution maybe not there, but right idea and trying to get you to get off the ground faster and just be jumping more. So I think I probably read some things on that and looked into that, was fascinated by that, and saw like you're a strong guy. I know you're a strong guy, so I think I'm just interested to see if you completely converted your training away from just pure strength training for health reasons and start incorporated power training. plyometrics and things to like that can actually have an impact on how bouncy we are, because I think
Hmm.
personal belief, but I think too much of it gets explained away as genetics.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a really interesting point with that one. I have obviously, I mean, we're talking about this. I've told a number of people that, like, yeah, it'd be really cool to dunk by the time I'm 30 at a November. Um, and immediately, people go like, oh, that's a lot of genetics. Like, how is it you're jumping right now? And it's like, well, I maxed out with a 18-inch vert in high school, so things are good.
Was that
Um,
low?
it's not low. It still might be that low. But people just immediately defaulting to the genetics. And so I think by you planting the seed and our conversations around it is like, you can work towards it and,
Yeah.
try and reprogram your body to be more explosive with it in ways that I hadn't ever really considered.
Yeah, and all that's very real, backed up by evidence, research, things like that. Like I just think it's a silly approach, and one I fight against in my professional life every day at work, that like life happens and we literally get, like, we are 6 feet tall and then we literally get pushed into the ground as we go, like gravity always wins kind of
Yeah.
deal, which is true. But the way that looks, like your health span rather than your lifespan, can be dramatically different than that. There was a recent paper, if I was really presenting on this, I'd try to cite it, but all these
Well,
classic,
someday we'll get to
yeah,
this, you
yeah,
presenting
it's
me
like
as a case study. Yeah.
1% decline in like muscle size, 3% decline in muscle strength, 5% decline in muscle power annually, or close to that time period after 30. Like that's crazy, and that's
Hmm.
just seen as aging.
Hmm.
The newest study came out and said, should you continue to train, those deficits do not exist. So it is not necessarily a component of aging, rather than a dramatic change in training and activity, which I think
Hmm.
is a nuanced argument, but something that is very that needs more attention and needs a perspective change there. So yeah, that's, I think, why that, if even aging, something that we thought does happen, if we can fight back against that,
Yeah.
why do you like why couldn't we try this? I guess I kind of say like chicken or the egg. Maybe you weren't the bounciest of kids because you always, maybe that just wasn't in your sport specificity growing up. Late onset into basketball, you weren't necessarily doing any high plyometric load. None of us long jumped or did things like that as young kids, so like you adapt early. It was like move forward in a straight line as fast as you can, maybe cut a little bit.
Hmm.
And then weight room, it was like take heavy loads, move
Hmm.
them slowly, try to move as much as you can, which is the opposite of what a jump is. So
Yeah.
I think it's
No,
really fast.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's funny that you call that out because I front squatted. It was either 245 or 265 for a max rep in high school, and just thinking like, yeah, that's
Right.
badass. Like that's everything is as heavy as possible, as little as possible, and then it's like losing kind of the what does it get you?
Yeah.
It got me my 18-inch vert. It's like,
Right.
well,
Right.
what's the point of what we're doing here?
Exactly.
So with
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, like the point of it, and I think luckily, as everyone gets smarter, research is more accessible, and things and perspectives are starting to change, is people are moving more towards not just generic strength training or generic training for any sport, to sport specific training, because that in the research has proven to be top dog. Like you need to train, and it's so simple, but it's ironic and kind of remarkable that it got this way.
yeah.
But it's sport specific training. So if you are a jumping athlete, you need to be practicing jumping. If you are a lineman or things like that, you need to be strong, but you also need to be incredibly fast in that first power step, back if you're pass blocking.
Hmm.
Swimming, same, like all of these sports are so dramatically different. Yet still it's just like, go to the gym 3 times a week and squat, deadlift, bench for some reason. And it's just remarkable, and it
Yeah.
probably is what it looks like now in the modern day, in the modern, like even high school level, it probably looks a little bit smarter than that, but that's what we went through.
Right.
So it's all we have to reference at this point.
Yeah. Crazy to see that shift, and I wonder where I'd be at without that.
So I'd essentially consider you an entirely blank slate. You have never power trained before. You
Yeah.
have never plyometric trained before in an appropriate way. Like, why not? The thing is, like, you just shouldn't say no.
Right.
I guess don't close the door when we haven't even tried any of this stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's the right fit for me, right? The walking on at Lewis and Clark for really no good reason other than I want to go see it, what I could do with this. Let's go see if
Right.
I can be a college athlete. Did it.
And it
So
capitalizes
like,
on it capitalizes on a remarkable trait of yours, which is determination. Like, maybe I would be like, oh, it'd be really cool to dunk, and I'd probably spend 2 3 weeks at the gym, and then I would let life kind of get in the way. But like, it's a goal of yours, and it's long term, and you have developed the behaviors to be able to actually work towards that goal in the time and attention that
yeah,
takes.
for better or worse, kind of the glutton for punishment kind of thing. But
Yeah.
see if I can't go throw one down.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the powerlifting and the plyometrics. Let's dive into those because I've shown you some of the videos, right? You're my go-to guy where it's like, hey, I did this. What do you think of this? This kind of plyo workout. Then we get to Boston, and you're like, yo, this might be. I think you're doing it wrong. Like, what exactly did you see in there that I need to work on, that I need to develop with some of those plyos, some of those powerlifting things?
Yeah. And I just I'm gonna be a stickler for wording power training rather than
Power training. Good.
powerlifting is specific
This is why you're the first guest on the show. Yeah. Keep
but
it alive.
power training is training high force, high speed, essentially, which is some component of that is in powerlifting, but powerlifting is like a straight, not really, but classically is a few lifts. You don't really need that much load right now. So what I saw in Boston and what I've seen from the plyometric videos is the right intent, the right weights following a program, but the sequencing is where we're off. And the
What is the sequencing?
focusing on the training, yeah, I think is off too. So we'll get to that. The sequence being the science of a jump, I guess I could call it, where the most important part of a jump, and again, this sounds so remarkably simple, is to go up.
Yeah.
Up, up, up. So and I'm not sure if this video gonna like, can I use my hands and talk and
Yeah,
explain?
do whatever. I can try my
Well,
hand at
I won't.
throwing graphics on there. Like we can.
Yeah, I won't be able to obviously
crazy.
draw anything out, but we could compare like the video of you and Joey and just show
Yeah.
a couple main things. So a couple subtle parts of a jump is like people think you run straight, and then you plant your feet and then you jump into the air. But when you're doing that, by running straight, your momentum is it's physics, will carry you forward. In a jump, forward is not upward. Anything that's not upward is wasted movement, wasted energy, and it's bad. So when you take your run, you kind of run sideways, you're kind of at the rim, plant your feet and jump, but you are going forward too much. Whereas you should be trying to go upward more. How do we change that? A couple different things. There's a couple sequences where and I know this will come up on like an Instagram or YouTube shorts. People call it the penultimate step or the gather step or the bracing step, or that's actually a separate one. But a big long stride before, and then your body should rotate your second foot before you go up. You never see somebody dunk head on. I mean, unless it's Russell Westbrook down the lane and he's doing more of a long jump than anything. If somebody has the time, they're turning sideways, jumping and throwing down from there, which is a subtle thing that I think, like, go watch the dunk contest and watch how many guys are really coming head on at the rim versus their feet go like this and then they go up. And the important part is you take a good bound, a good long penultimate step, they call it, in the jumping world. And then and then it depends on how you would do it. I would do it with my left foot. My left foot actually comes around and is breaking my force going forward to try to use the Achilles tendon, essentially, which can take load and turn it into force. Like, it has a reactionary component to it. It has a elasticity component to it. Take that force that was going forward, turn it into going upward. So when we watched your draw steps came, and then you jumped really wide at the same time with you'd had a little rotation, but nowhere near what we're looking for. And so you kind of land flat, jump up and out towards the camera in this point, and we're wasting a ton of energy. So sequence there, issues there being moving forward too much and then being too wide. And we talked about this in Boston. When you throw 265 front squat, you want your knees out, you want to be pushing wide, you want to get appropriate depth. When you jump, you want the most narrow base of support. Think trying to jump, let's see, well, just think about a pogo stick. A pogo stick has all the force going through one point.
That one single,
Right. And if a pogo stick for some reason had two sticks and they were wide out, you're sending forces up at an angle this way. And again, anything that's not this is wasted. So we're wasting energy jumping too wide,
Mhm.
pushing up, but up at an angle, rather than getting ourselves square, left foot in front of right, and bouncing straight up with a small, in the physical therapy world, we would
Yeah,
base of support. So we
yeah,
want to narrow your base of support to try to get more of a pogo to try to go straight upward.
really interesting because
Tracking there at all?
as we talked about, right, my body not like jumping isn't the default, and so wondering if it's almost going too fast, and my body's like, okay, here's a way we can deal with this. Let's cut out some of what we're doing because
Yeah,
again, just not used to going up. So that wider base slows some of it down, keeps things in control. I think with basketball, as I picked it up in early high school and everything, it was figuring out how I do everything in control and then trying to add on the speed afterwards. So
yeah, yeah,
my body has kind of had a natural e-brake on it
yeah.
this whole time, just because it doesn't. We're not used to that. So
But
trying to figure out everything, like centralize everything, get everything really narrow, really tight.
Mhm. Which it
To,
honestly, like, I don't want to teach you to do that always
Mhm,
because it's the exact opposite for getting through the lane and establishing yourself for a jump shot. You need a wide base. Wide is
mhm,
stability.
mhm.
Narrow is not stable, but if you're focused, it's going to be better. So it makes sense that like you get in the lane, you're not going to right now, at least previously in your basketball history, you're not going to go yam on somebody. You're not going straight up.
Yeah.
You're getting wide and stable so you can get you would never try to like jump shoot, take a jump shot off of a dunk, a pre-dunk jump. Does that make sense? That
Yep.
would be your body would be going all different directions. It would be way too hard to control,
Hmm.
going too far up. So it actually makes total sense to me that you're wide and stable. Also from football, like when you're cutting a wide base is good, things like that. Like there's a balance there. Throwing any sort of throwing a wide-ish or wider than you
Hmm.
need for
Everything was always
base.
taught like shoulder width, right? Everything
Yeah,
shoulder
get
width.
balanced. Yeah, the
Yeah.
general athletic position, shoulder width, knees slightly bent, balanced. Weight could go on your toes, on your heels, either way. But yeah, so I think that's a big part of it is we need to take this base of support and narrow it to a pogo stick.
Hmm. And so then do I incorporate that into everything I'm doing plyometric wise?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So box jumps, if you look at your box jumps now, I almost would rather you draw step into the box and jump up sideways, you might think, in relation, because you're not going to run, jump forward onto box. You're going to draw step, be turned around. So these are your feet, land, jump up, and you're pretty much going to be on the box. You won't be able to go straight up. You'll shift enough to get onto the box, but you
Mhm.
also don't need the box. You could turn, just jump straight up, and then it would be interesting too to put the box where your normal box jump is, approach it, jump straight up in the air, and see if you can land back on the ground and don't be on the box. That would tell you your energy is going up.
Say that again.
Yeah. So do your same. Think about the jumps, the box jumps that we used to do.
Yep.
Jump forward onto box as
Yep.
high as running, or I'm sorry, jumping. We then took that bracing step. We turn, so we
Hmm.
are now facing this way. Box is this way,
Hmm.
perpendicular to box. If you can jump straight up, come straight back down, and land on the floor, not the
Mm.
box,
Hmm.
momentum is no
That
longer
means,
carrying forward.
yeah,
It's carrying straight up, ideally. It's an
interesting. So
idea. I don't know
it's
that I've
almost
tried it.
the yeah. Well, I mean, we talked, before we turned on the recording about all the stuff out there on YouTube, all the nonsense, all the kind of pseudoscience that dunking has become. It's a fascinating rabbit hole to dive into, but it's a lot of junk out there. This is almost the anti-box jump, right? Where
Mhm,
everyone else is preaching the box jump, and
mhm.
to an extent, like something that you can tangibly base it on, right? Being able to see how high you're jumping, that makes sense. But
Yeah,
to your point about just going up and down, I've truly never thought about jumping that way. And it makes a lot of sense
different
because
styles.
everything I'm
Yeah.
doing is kind of lunging, kind of.
Mhm.
So,
Forward. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think for like personal reference, think about how Joey jumps and how Mark jumps. Mark has no understanding of the straight up because of he's a track athlete, he goes forward. When he
Yeah.
jumps, it's Russell Westbrook. It is this way, it's at you. Joey will turn and go up.
Hmm.
So those are some
Yeah.
good. kind of mental ones that you'd see the total difference in. I will say, and this is not to tell you to stop doing box jumps. It's critical to be doing box jumps, but
Mhm.
for an entirely different objective that we can get to later.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how much more later we have. I'm on the Zoom free and we have 6 minutes before we
Good.
get cut off.
There we
So
go. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. I'll just jump into it if you want.
go
The
for
other
it.
component, there's sequencing. So you got to figure out the sequence, which means your body has to learn to move in new movement patterns, and that's hard.
Yeah.
Practicing over and over and over again, that's a neurological thing. Do as many repetitions. You don't need weight. Just try to figure out the sequence. It's like, think of it as, in quotes, muscle memory.
Hmm.
That just means a movement pattern you're familiar with.
Hmm.
The
And that's
other
the penultimate jump into the jump, right? That's just figuring out how
penultimate
I'm
into it. Yeah,
rotating my body, right?
yeah, penultimate is the big lunge,
Mhm.
and then the next foot's going to come around and over quickly, and you're going
Mhm.
to turn sideways or nearly turn sideways in
Mhm.
order to break forces going forward, transition them into upward
Go
forces.
up. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And you can just do that over and over, just grab on different parts of the net, boom, and just keep doing. The other part of it is completely on the other side, way away from the gross movement pattern, large movement pattern, I might say, and more into like the actual training, and the focus of that being the change from an eccentric movement, a muscle and or tendon lengthening, into a concentric movement of things going short.
Mm.
So, like the bench press, you lower it down, your chest is stretching under load, and it's actually way stronger in that regard. Everyone will know this. If you're going to max bench, it's not hard to get it down. It's
Right.
hard to get it up. So you're stronger getting it down, and then you have to explode up. So explode part, doing it quickly, is the power portion. That's power training. And then the transition of eccentric to concentric is huge. In jumping, we have a significant change there because of the length and potential available in the Achilles tendon. So the box jump, more important than going up the box, is coming down and getting back up in the air.
Mhm.
The drop jump down and getting off the floor as quickly as possible. That's the huge benefit and necessary benefit of a box jump. So
And
it's practicing that switch from phase change, eccentric, concentric. You
mhm.
can think
And I think that was probably the most interesting thing as I got into plyos, right? When you were sending them my way over the summer and really getting a feel for it was moving away from, again, the squat as the example, right? As much as possible, but as much to load into it versus as quick as possible.
Mhm.
How do I make sure I pair that with the right form? Because I think that was something
Yeah,
else in Boston that came away
yeah,
with, like, I thought I was up and down quick, but at the same time, it's still too much of a brace with it.
yeah, right. And it's tough. You want to be as fast as possible, um, and you want to be as springy as possible, meaning you don't really want to feel a stretch in your muscle. You want to feel a stretch in your Achilles, which is a hard thing to master. So maybe I'll try to explain that better. You want to be The cue that I have seen to be effective in other people is jumping off your big toe, tightening
Mm,
every. You want your ankle to be stiff. Whatever angle that your ankle ends up in, keep it there. The Achilles will stretch, and that's what you want to work on. It's your bungee cord. The Achilles will do the work. The muscle is staying at the same length or changing slightly.
yeah,
You want to focus on the return. Think of everything like a trampoline. Boing, boing, boing. If you focus on fast, you will prioritize the Achilles. Um,
that's
there's some,
helpful. Yeah.
yeah, there's some sled work that knees over toes guy talks about, and from what I've seen thus far, which is limited, I like what he's putting out right now. So I think he'd be someone that you could find you could follow. You don't need to talk to me every time. He can give you some good ideas,
Yeah.
and some good training stuff. And he seems mostly free online, which is nice. Or a lot of
That
his,
is, yeah, because
huge.
everything else is join my program. You'll be
Yeah,
dunking in 30 days for
exactly,
the low
exactly.
fee of X
Yeah,
amount.
right.
Yeah,
So
I
I think
like the sound of
that's
that.
another.
Pushing it off the front toe really helps me visualize it because
All of the big toe.
yeah, everything else has just been as quick as possible. And
Yeah, yeah,
figured if I was quick, everything else would follow. And that's
yeah.
still not the case because that is still kind of loading into it.
And I would challenge you to start doing some of this barefoot or barefoot or in socks if you're comfortable with that.
Cool.
I think the feel will be a lot better. Um, and then essentially when you want to eliminate, we had talked about this too, is being a pogo stick. A pogo stick does not bend in the, I guess, shaft of the pogo stick does not bend. Your knee
Mhm.
does bend. If your knee starts bending forward too much when you land, which is what you're doing, you're actually creating slack in the muscle and in the Achilles tendon. So it doesn't have to be super strong and stiff and bouncy because it's
Yeah.
changing its length. You're adding slack, and we want to take out slack and use the bungee cord as best as possible. Be a stiff, strong rubber band.
Stiff, strong rubber band.
Mhm.
Got to get that tattooed here so I keep it
Yeah.
keep it top of
And
mind.
then I'm seeing our time. Strength training improves tendon stiffness. That's why
Okay.
we still want you lifting heavy.
Yeah.
Plyometrics improves the rate that we change between eccentric and concentric. So you need to be, again, stiff and then bouncy by practicing bouncing, essentially. So stiff with your weight training, which I think
Mhm.
you've probably you're at probably a pretty good stiffness point. The bouncy part,
Never had a problem with that.
yeah, the bouncy part is now what's next. So getting off the ground fast.
Right on. All right. Well, this has been super informative, and you're the man, Andrew. Appreciate you
Yeah,
hopping
man.
on here with us, and thanks for letting me bother you with all this fun
Yeah.
nonsense that you planted here.
Thanks for letting me just spew at you. So thanks, Tim. Been a pleasure.
Appreciate you, brother. Much love.
Love
We'll
you.
talk soon.